I'm Alex Sharfin, and this is the Momentum Podcast, made for empire builders, game changers, trailblazers, shot takers, record breakers, world makers, and creators of all kinds. Those among us who can't turn it off and don't know why anyone would want to. We challenge complacency, destroy apathy, and we are obsessed with creating momentum so we can roll over bureaucracy and make our greatest contribution. Sure, we pay attention to their rules, but only so that we can bend them, break them, and then rewrite them around our own will. We don't accept our destiny, we define it. We don't understand defeat because you only lose if you stop, and we don't know how. While the rest of the world clings to average and strives for the status quo, we are the minority, the few, who are willing to hallucinate there could be a better future. And instead of just daydreaming of what could be, we endure the vulnerability and exposure it takes to make it real. We are the evolutionary hunters, clearly the most important people in the world, because entrepreneurs are the only source of consistent, positive human evolution, and we always will be. Thanks for being here with me. I am excited to share this tactic with you. The title of this podcast is Double Your Productivity in 2 Weeks. And I want to share with you a strategy that I have used for my entire career. I was so fortunate to find this early on, to find just that when I first started. And this is a Peter Drucker strategy. I want to give credit where credit's due, or at least that's where I learned it. And it will change your life. Now here, I want to share with you an insight that was shared with me. I'm trying to remember how long ago, but years ago, but from a consultant named Kirk Dando. And Kirk came into my organization and conducted a 360 and talked to all my leadership and gave me this very confronting review of how I was seen in my organization and really, more importantly, like the lack of vision and the lack of where we were going. And I brought him in to do one thing, and we ended up doing something completely different. And I sat down with Kirk, and he said, what's the most important thing in the world to you? And I said, well, Katie and my daughters. And he said, if I took your calendar and your bank statement and I looked at the two of them, would I see that Katie and your daughters were the most important thing in your world? And I can remember being knocked back a little by the question, because I immediately instinctively knew that, not instinctively, I just rationally knew that if he looked at both of those places, my bank account, my bank statement to see where I spent money and my calendar to see where I spent time, that I was screwed, that I could not prove that that was a true statement. At the time I was really burning the candle. I was pushing as hard as I possibly can. I really wasn't taking the right amount of time for my wife or for my kids. And this is the tactic that I used to fix that situation. And when I get to the place where I'm overwhelmed, where I get to the place where I really can't see straight, this is the tactic I use. And so it's called a time study. And this is where you really put yourself under the microscope and understand what you're doing in your life and how you're doing it. And so here's how it works. For a 2-week period. Now, if you're going to do this, here's what I say. I say just bite the bullet and go for 14 days. I do this. Every CEO I work with does this. People pay me $36,000 to tell a year as their coach. And this is what I tell them to do. This is what I'm telling you to do. It is life-changing. You go for a period of 2 weeks, and in context, which means you carry a sheet of paper around with you that has a time block for each hour, and you write down what you do every hour for 2 weeks, 24 hours a day. And here's what will happen. In fact, let me share with you a quick story about some recent feedback I got on this. So I normally tell people, you do this for 2 weeks, but after the third day, it's going to push back so hard on you what you've been writing down that you're going to want to start making changes. I don't hold back. You should start making changes. And The person who I shared this with most recently was one of my private clients, but directly before that, I spent about 45 minutes on the phone with Dave Woodward, who's the CMO, and I think he's like VP of Business Development. I don't really know what his here's what you need to know about Dave. Title doesn't matter with Dave. Dave's the guy at ClickFunnels that is helping Russell grow that company into what will probably be the first privately funded software as a service company that hits $1 billion. Like no VC at all. And in a lot of ways, like I think they should already be there in valuation. If anybody saw their negative cost of customer acquisition, like they make money on every lead they acquire. Sit on that for a little bit. Like that just shows you what type of a business it is. It's incredible. And they are doing so many things right. It's crazy. I've been around a lot of fast growth organizations and they're just extraordinary. And Dave and I were talking and just last week, and I felt like so like excited to be on the phone with him. ClickFunnels has done a lot for us, and Russell's done a lot for me. And to be able to chat with Dave and help him out, and we were just kind of I was going through how I would normally coach an executive at his level or talk to an executive at his level about where the constraints were. And about 40 minutes into the call, I said, Dave, I think I know why we're on the phone. And he said, why? And I said, I have this tactic to share with you. It's a time study. And I explained to him exactly what I just explained to you. I'll tell you again. You 2 weeks, you carry around the paper. You write down every hour exactly what you're doing. So you check Facebook, you write it down. You go over to Twitter, you write it down. Even if it's just a couple minutes, you're writing down everything that you're doing. And here's what happened. That was about 3 days ago. And Dave posted a live video on Facebook. And he said, I've been doing this thing called the time study for 3 days. And I got to tell you, it's like the most confronting thing I've done. And it's just ticking me off. And, and he said, I got this from Alex Sharfin. And he explained our whole story of being on the phone that I just did to you. And it was so gratifying to me because every time I see that, here's what I know. I know that Dave's life's about to completely and totally irrevocably change because his productivity has gone up just through the awareness that he already has from 3 days. I guarantee you he would agree. His awareness of where he's truly spending his time, where he's putting the most valuable currency any one of us have, is going up. And as he does this for the next 2 weeks, whoever he was 2 weeks ago ceases to exist because the level of awareness you create and the reality that stares back in you in the face. I remember with Kirk that when I did the time study after I left his office, and by the way, I was having my executives do time studies. I just hadn't done one in forever. So I wasn't even doing what I tell people to do at that point. So Kirk really saved me. And the time study I did for the next 2 weeks, like the first 3 days, I realized I had built like my life, because we create our lives as entrepreneurs. We decide where we're going to do. We decide how we're going to do it. We decide how much time we're going to spend. That's like why we do this. And so I created this life where I had like zero time with my family. And within 3 days, I started changing things. I couldn't keep it the same. And so it will be the same for you because here's what you realize, especially someone like me, like I've consulted with hundreds of hyper fast growth companies. I'm working with several right now that are just exploding and will continue to explode. Oh gosh, so freaking cool. We just started working with Brandon and Kaylin Poulin, who own Lady Boss, which is like, I get emotional when I talk about them. They have sold, or they have over 100,000 clients that they're helping with weight loss. And they have this massive movement where people are getting in shape. They're eating better foods. They're moving. They're following Kaylin like everywhere. And the two of them just had an event recently where like their core, real, I guess their highest advocates, like the people who really want to be around them, they attended this conference and they told us like when I spoke to them, it was just so exciting to hear how excited they were about the effect they were creating in the world. It was so like energizing to hear how excited they are about how they're growing this. And here's what I know as I work with them for the next couple weeks, because right now they're going through this process and they're going to do the time study. Here's what I know. It will change everything at Lady Boss. Like, that company is incredible right now, but I guarantee you, the impact those two are going to make is going to go haywire, whether I was involved with them or not. Just this tool would do it like it will for you. Like, you don't need me. You don't need me. I help in a tremendous way, especially for people who are growing a business that's over $1 million and, up. ClickFunnels, I think, is around 50, 60 million. And I can make this process a lot faster. I can give insight. I can share a lot of other things. But for you, if you just went through this process by day 3, you're going to be saying, man, I got to change things. And in a 2-week period, here's what you do. You go through all of it and you mark, what was it that I did here? Was it strategic? So strategic is what you should be doing. You can feel it in your heart, but like, if you want a little bit more, and you know what I'm talking about, but if you want a little bit more of a definition, it's like, it's the stuff that you really should do. I should do this podcast. I should not pay someone to do this podcast right now. That's strategic. I should conduct my once a week calls with my coaching groups, the groups that I get together with in person. I should do that. When we sell a day of my time and our day rate's $25,000 right now. When we sell a day of my time, I should do that. There's not anyone else we can get to go into a room that can produce $25,000. But more importantly, that also ends up in a much larger client for us. And the larger the client, the more we help, and the more we help, the more our revenue is. We've set up our system so we scale with our clients. And so when we get a client that goes through this, their business explodes. And to finish up the point I was making, Brandon and Kaylin, oh man, I think that they are so I've worked with so many entrepreneurs and they are truly one of a kind, and they're in their early 20s. Like I've got in their mid 20s, I've got so many millennials that are in their mid-20s running multi-million-dollar businesses. But here's what's interesting. They're businesses that are making incredible impacts, like saving other people's businesses and, making other people money and getting them in shape, like Brandon and Kaylin. And here's what I know is when a CEO or an executive like a business like that, in a business like that, or Dave Woodward at ClickFunnels goes through a time study, the impact of the company goes up. So here's why I'm sharing this with you. Like, this is the stuff I get paid for, but here's why I'm giving it to you. Because I know if you're listening to me, you're probably a contribution-based entrepreneur. I look at ClickFunnels and you look at, you walk into that building and there's just hundreds of gold records lined up, and those are 7-figure funnels. That means that every one of those records represents $1 million funnel. Do you know how many businesses gross $1 million? 3%. In a year, 3%. Russell's coached hundreds of people to build $1 million funnel. Like, if you're not using ClickFunnels, why not? And when you look at Dave going through this, here's what I know about that company. It's going to explode. It's going to do even more. It's going to have even a bigger fan base and more people using it. And it's going to get even more consistent because this process at the executive level changes the entire business. And if you're an entrepreneur, this process for you changes your entire life. So I'm excited for you, because here's all you have to do for the next 2 weeks. Take this as a challenge from me to write down what you're doing every hour for the next 2 weeks, total it all up, and you're going to very quickly see the total. So you're going to write down how much of your time is strategic, how much of your time is tactical, how much of your time is something else, and how much of your time is family time or self-care. And something else is like when you're using the restroom. But when you're reading, if that's self-care for you, that's self-care. And tactical is when somebody else, or strategic is when you're doing it, like I just explained. Tactical is when someone entirely different is doing it. Or sorry, someone entirely different could do it. Tactical is when you could get help with it. And you've got to make that decision. And again, this is one of those feelings, but like people ask me, is answering email strategic or tactical? Well, I can tell you that for years I've known that email is about 90% tactical and then 10% strategic. Can someone else do that for you? Is answering every messenger message strategic or tactical? Wow, depending on what's coming into your messenger, it's hard to look at it as strategic. So maybe somebody can help you with that. And today, for people like us who want to grow their impact, grow a team, grow a business, there is more resource available to help you with tactical than there ever has been before. When I started running businesses, we barely had the internet. Like I was one of the first consulting companies of my kind to have a website on the internet. And if you go look it up on the Wayback Machine, it's embarrassing. But today, on tap, we have tactical help around the world at pretty much like you name the rate you want to pay and the service level you want to get, and it's just there. And so every one of us who does one of these time studies can change everything in our lives. At the end of the 2 weeks, you're going to have totals. And here's what happens. That first time study where you have strategic, tactical, other, self-care, and time with family, when you have all of that together, then you can do this again the last 2 weeks of the next 90 days. And if you do this 4 times in a year, first, you're going to double your productivity every 2 weeks. You let me know if it happened or not. Let me know if it worked, because I challenge you to double your productivity in the next 2 weeks by doing this. And then what will also happen is at the end of doing this, the last 2 weeks for every 90-day period of the year, is you're going to have what will be the most successful and most growth-filled year you've ever had in your life. So here's my challenge. Next 2 weeks, do your time study, total them up, and then let me know on social media how it went. This is one of those things that if you do this, you will not recognize who you are in 90 days.
Whenever I lose focus in my life, we have a tool that changes everything. We've literally seen it double our members' productivity within 2 weeks, thousands of times. It's an old school tactic called a time study. If there was any way to create focus faster, we would use it, but this is the best way that we know. Within the first couple of days of implementing this tactic, we're already finding inefficiencies and figuring out how to be more effective. After 2 weeks, we've broken habits of wasting time and being inefficient, and this alone has massive value. When everything is said and done, you can evaluate the results and ask important questions like, should I be doing all of this? Can I delegate this to anyone? Is everything I'm doing the highest and best use of my time? When you can shift from working tactically in your business to increasing the percentage of time you work strategically, your business will grow like crazy. If you're ready to double your productivity and take your time back, get the time study now. Go to sharfen.com/time study and get the free time study resource you need to double your productivity and get your time back. That's sharfen.com/time study.